Hello everyone and welcome to Environment Design 3 Commercial. This is week 9 of our studies, and this week we're going to be looking at a case study that has recently been developed in Dubai, and we're going to be looking at this project as a way to further understand how we can increase interaction and consumer engagement beyond just this simple method of utilizing selling space within the retail environment. So this week is all about understanding how we can better craft that 21st century consumer experience. And the case study we're going to be looking at this week is Level Kids in Dubai. Level Kids is a highly engaging, interactive, immersive store concept that, as I said, was recently developed in Dubai. It was developed by Kaloub Group, who is also responsible for a range of other highly engaging retail space concepts. The space overall was designed by Fitch Design, and the interaction design was done by Kin Design, and a lot of the animations that you'll see in the actual project was also done by Studio Tinto. So this is really a very interesting project because not only does it really change the way in which consumers operate within the retail space, in that there's lots of obviously selling space going on, but there's also a lot of interaction and engagement in events, activities, learning, and so forth, well beyond purely the simple act of shopping. So a really, really interesting project. So the project overall spans 10,000 square meters of space. It is somewhere between a department store and a specialty retailer. So if you think of something like David Jones or Myers that has a series of brands showcased within its actual premises, it operates in a similar way. However, this particular project has essentially got a series of small scale specialized boutiques located within the actual larger concept store. So each high level brand sort of has its own space located within the store, and then Level Kids as a whole is a kind of conglomerate of fused interaction spaces between those actual small scale boutiques. So it sort of brings together a series of branding and spatial design and interaction beyond the selling floor of its own, weaving together all of these little sub-brands that exist within its actual project location. So one of the most impressive things about the Level Kids project is that it uses a really strong and extraordinary narrative, okay? It integrates custom design elements, really strong lighting and AV. It creates a plethora of really enchanting spaces throughout the levels to really engage the consumer in activities and fun interaction between the actual digital displays, boutiques, and, a plethora of additional add-on services, which I'll go into a little bit more as we progress through today's lecture. So there's a lot of opportunity within the actual project for consumers to create their own story and engage with the different brands that they particularly love, while they're really sort of being connected with in terms of the larger narrative that ties all of these boutiques together. So a word from the developers directly, which I thought was useful for including, just to sort of understand where their prediction and vision for shopping of the future sort of heading. So Linton Crockford Moore, who is one of the creative directors of the Kaloub Group, says that retail design, the retail landscape of tomorrow, is all about experiential retail design, a landscape where consumers are looking for meaningful shopping experiences that are emotional and engaging multi-sensorial journeys. And really, Level Kids epitomizes that multi-sensorial journey. It really does engage the consumer on a multitude of platforms and in a range of different ways, so that there's loads and loads of opportunities, no matter what your predisposition as a consumer, for you to interact with the brand of Level Kids and the sub-boutiques located within the actual project. So the overall project is broken up into 3 levels. Level 1 is the crystalline waters. It is really based on that idea of exploring the ocean. And from the moment the consumer really steps into the store, they're confronted with an incredible 10-meter LED display that introduces them to this beautiful concept of a digital ocean. Now, these characters were custom designed for the Level Kids project, and they showcase a whole range of extraordinary geometric animals that have their own personality types and behaviors. So rather than, just a simple looping animation that runs continuously for the consumer to watch, every single one of these animals actually has been embedded with its own unique personality and behavior. So it's developed on a gaming platform called Unity. And what that does is it enables the characters to really interact in a multitude of different ways. So it means that no matter what time you're actually standing there and watching this animation, you may never see the same thing twice. And that's really exciting because it allows every consumer to sort of have their own little unique underwater moment with the actual project. Now, of course, there's not enough time to cover all of the aspects of this extraordinary project in this lecture, but I'm just going to do the hit list of some of the most impressive elements of the project. And then this week, in your extended learning activities, there are a bunch of links that really expand on the project as a whole that you can look at to get a better understanding of all of the aspects and how you might apply that to your own project. And the learning activities this week also focus on what you can take away from this particular case study for use in your own project. So yeah, so this little element here was designed by Studio Tinto for King Design. They're the creatives responsible for creating this extraordinary digital ocean and these lovely characters and the extremely impressive code behind them as well. So the geometry of the characters does get reflected throughout the rest of the space, which you'll see as we go on. So that sort of origami style geometric take on the animals is something that is really prevalent throughout all three levels in both physical and digital space. And it really ties the entire interior together between all the common spaces. Also, throughout the project, there are custom sculptural elements that further support the themes of each level. This one in particular is, as I said, on level 1, which is the crystalline waters. Now, these are custom glass blown jellyfish, which actually have LED bulbs embedded into them, so you can actually change the color of the lighting throughout the day or for a specific event. So again, it keeps the variation really high and stops the environment from becoming too static altogether. So these sort of featured lighting elements and sculptures throughout the spaces tie the entire level together and also direct the consumer's attention throughout the journey, gives them a focal point for where to head to, much like our memorable moments category that we've discussed in previous weeks with our event theory framework. So this is a way in which they have addressed, a similar type of sort of operation of the retail space to be able to create focal points for the consumer throughout the actual environment so that they can direct their journey along the best possible path. Level 2 has the subcategory of flowering desert, and this really inspires, so this overall theme inspires every single one of the levels. Each one sort of has its own overall essence that gets explored. On the second level, as I said, flowering desert is the theme. And one of the most exciting and beautiful elements on that level is this interactive dynamic forest with these extraordinary fabric flowers that open and close as consumers pass through the actual corridor beneath them. So it uses sensory technologies to respond to consumers as they pass. As you reach up for the flower, it will either open and close. So again, it's just further extending that interaction and engagement with the consumer rather than being a static aesthetic element that doesn't do much beyond looking beautiful. There's actually some really intelligent development behind the idea, which encourages the consumer to really engage with the environment around them. Also on this level, there are these extraordinary giant sparkling geometric animals. So there is the shoe safari on level 2, which is obviously, as it says, all things shoes. And being the flowering desert, they've created these amazing animals to sort of support that narrative. These are really interesting, and you'll see in some of the resources I've provided for you this week the way in which the kids tend to interact with these sculptures. They sort of encourage the consumer to come up close, to touch them. So both the materiality, the reflectivity, and the grandeur of scale encourages the consumer to interact with them beyond them simply being sort of an art element within the space. Of course, you know, their narrative links the entire floor together, but materiality, form, and scale are definitely things that you could use to engage further consumer interaction within your space. Scene setting is used really widely throughout the entire store to support the narrative of each of the levels, and it's different on every level. On level 2 in particular, there's a sort of quirky, humorous undertone to all of the scene setting elements. So you can see here the hippopotamus with the monkey throwing bananas onto its back is just one of the examples of, you know, this kind of funny humor that is explored through the actual scene setting elements on this level. And there's all sorts of great photos and footage of kids climbing all over these and taking photos with these elements. So it really does encourage that emotional connection and interaction with the target market, which of course are the children, and also with the target audience, which of course are the parents, because in seeing their child have fun and really enjoy the space around them, you know, it aids that emotional connection for the parent as well. So there's this really strong injection of personality and character throughout all of the levels, which initiate this very intricate emotional bond between the consumer and the overall brand that is Level Kids. So even though these are, you know, a series of smaller scale boutiques existing within the larger brand space of Level Kids, consumers are actually tying that emotional connection directly to Level Kids as the overarching brand rather than the individual subcategories, just because of the way in which this narrative has been created throughout each of the levels and the common spaces. Level 3 is the Enchanting Sky. And on this level, again, that geometric narrative and animal narrative is continued, but now we are in the skyscape. In this level, there are these giant, beautiful pink swans that adorn the floor and the ceiling. And some of the swans, which you can see in this picture, are large enough for you to climb inside, which of course offers ample photo opportunity for children and parents and so forth. So some really cool elements throughout. The other thing that they've done on the 3rd level is they've elevated a lot of the displays to hanging mode. So rather than locate too much stock, you know, on floor displays or wall displays, a lot of the displays are actually happening hanging from the ceiling, which really encourages consumers to explore a multitude of different pathways to get to things. It also opens up that floor level. It encourages children, I guess if you think about children and their heights in general, most children would be able to get underneath a lot of these display racks. So again, you know, it encourages children to explore underneath the clothing, look up into, you know, sort of the color scape that's created above them from the clothes in general. So these are just simple ways in which you can consider how you might engage your consumer in a different way. You know, what does if you're doing a garment space, what does that garment look like from below instead of straight on? Or the pair of shoes, what does it look like from directly above instead of front on as you would usually approach it? If you're doing, I know one of you guys are doing MAC, for example, if you're doing makeup, rather than the makeup displayed flat, you know, on a table as you usually see in makeup stores, what happens if you lift that palette and you create a beautiful array of color across a wall and you actually turn that product into an aesthetic element that, you know, you can engage with in a really different way. So remember to be mindful of that in your project as well. One of the other things that I think is really cool is that they have these giant interactive pinwheels throughout the space as well, which you can go up to and turn and blow, and some of them, you know, even move digitally, keeping this sort of kind of kinetic action happening throughout the whole floor. So that's a really cool element as well. And the other thing is that the lighting on this level is incredibly dynamic. So it changes through a range of sky schemes, essentially from sunrise to sunset to blue sky to night sky and so forth, which really varies, day to day and sometimes even twice a day. And it has the ability to really direct the consumer's attention as required throughout the level. So you can see here, there are some recesses and shelves on the wall to the right-hand side, which are given extra focus in this instance because the lighting around it is of a really contrasting color and actually also quite dark. So when you're thinking about bringing together the lighting and technology in AV, which we've already looked at, really think beyond simply just plugging it in and leaving it static. Think about how you can make it dynamic and engaging and encourage the consumer to want to come back to see how the store is varying, because ultimately that converts to sales down the track for your client. So as I said, there are a series of small boutiques located within this space, but there are tons and tons of traversing spaces around those that essentially connect the smaller boutiques and connect floor to floor. And these have been really utilised throughout the project to further embed that narrative of the actual environment right through the project. So there's these structural columns which span from the ground floor to the top floor, and they've been digitized with LED display screens showcasing the story of sea, land and sky unfolding across the columns from ground floor upwards. So if you have a look here, you can see on the right-hand side, there's a bunch of fish swimming on the bottom floor. As you'll see further here on the second floor, you can see there's some trees, and there's a bunch of animals walking across there, and that sort of alternates. Again, in one of the resources I've provided you this week, it does show how those actually operate. So if you can imagine, as you're standing on the ground floor here of the escalators looking up towards the top floor, you essentially see the progression of that story. So you see a bunch of sea animals on the bottom columns, land animals and landscape on the middle floor, and then skyscape with the geometric cranes and birds and swans and so forth on the top level. So really, from any point of the actual space, it's very easy to identify which floor you're on and what the narrative of that floor actually is. So there's also this beautiful ever-changing skyscape that adorns the very top ceiling of the actual building. And again, this varies throughout the day. So, sometimes it's cloud cover, sometimes it's beautiful and purple like this. It just really depends on what events are happening within the space, what particular brands are being showcased, and a whole range of things. But the fact that it's really dynamic is also very, very exciting, because again, it's constantly changing, which is giving opportunity for our consumers to have a very personalized experience of the space every time that they come to enjoy it. There are a bunch of customer service spaces on each floor as well, and these also reflect the overall sort of theme and palette of each of the floors. So you can see this one here is downstairs on our C level, and there is the same sort of blue tonality and material palette that is explored on this floor. You can also see that there's a really strong echo of the geometric elements that you see in all of the sculptural animals and other elements. So like the column here features the geometric tile, the actual point of sale or services counter, has that same origami geometric essence to it. The mirrored panel on the back wall again picks up on that strong geometric aesthetic as well. So it's subtle enough to not draw too much attention, but strong enough to reinforce that overall essence throughout the entire space. Now, apart from the physicality of the actual environment, there is a plethora of additional offerings that are available at Level Kids. So the brand buy-in opportunities that are explored in both the environment design and the consumer experience are far beyond just selling space. And when we say selling space, we mean physical product space within the store. So as well as an incredibly engaging journey throughout the shopping experience, they offer this huge amount of services. For starters, they have a children's spa The spa is located on the second floor of the building, and it offers everything from haircuts to nail art and beyond. And it's a really lovely, stress-free environment where every tiny human can enjoy a transformation alongside mum or dad. So the whole spa is designed in two parts. There is a boys' side and a girls' side. Now, think of that what you might like. Remember that, you know, it is located in Dubai, which does have a strong cultural gender separation. So for its particular market, it is quite appropriate in having done that. Obviously here in Australia, that's not something that, you know, we're particularly partial to. But nevertheless, there is some information for you to explore on this spa as well in the resources I've provided for you this week. So there's a children's spa. There's a photo studio, so you can capture all of your precious family portraits right after you've been to the day spa to have a pre-shoot pamper. There's also a kids club. So the kids club is really wonderful in its offerings. It does everything from ballet classes to hip hop dance classes, martial arts to dramatic arts. The list is endless, and I have provided you with one video this week of such a dance class taking place in the common spaces of the actual Level Kids site, so do be sure to check that out. There is a workshop, Cloud 7 workshop, which is basically an extraordinary place for children to go crazy with creative creation. Everything from soap making to cake decorating. There's an interactive digital lab where they can do 3D printing and building. There's a creative garage where they can use components to create anything that their imagination could potentially come up with. It's essentially a little haven of creative exploration for children of all ages. Now, one of the other things that is offered in this particular project is that there is a personal stylist and shopper service. So if you are a little bit overwhelmed with the whole shopping experience, or you simply don't have the time, or it's not really your thing, you can definitely enlist the help of a personal stylist or personal shopper to make things a little bit more indulgent and a little bit less challenging, and really get their help to, you know, have your tiny human looking extraordinary in no time. But it doesn't end there, okay? So they have everything from a magic candy factory to 3D printing services where you can bring in your files and utilize their 3D printing lab to print products or toys or decorative elements of your own design. There is a party space with catering and styling services that takes care of all of your party needs. There's a Lego workshop for kids to come and do classes and expand their Lego building skills. There's a unique gamer space where kids can try out the latest games and technologies to hit the market. There's this incredible service where you can turn any of your child's drawings into real toy creatures. So you bring in the drawing, and in a few days, you come and pick up the real stuffed version of your child's creation, which I think is just fantastic for them to see that come to life. There's also a series of gourmet restaurants, I think 3 restaurants in total. 2 of them are internationally renowned. So many extended services beyond the simple experience of engaging with product, okay? Now you can see that a lot of these concepts don't actually have, you know, physical selling space necessarily embedded into them, but the extra narrative and the extra emotional connection that's being created with the consumer as a result of the existence of these services and spaces is really strengthening that brand buy-in between the consumer and the brand. So these are just some examples of how you can further extend your consumer engagement and connectivity. So with all of this stuff in mind, as only one example of how you can immerse your consumer within the brand environment and engage them beyond the selling space, what we're going to be looking to do this week is really discuss your thoughts on this exemplar project once you've had a look at all of the additional resources I've provided you. So one of your learning activities this week asks you to talk about what you think works, what doesn't work, what areas could be improved, if there's anything here that you could use in terms of your own project. So please make sure that you do go through those resources and actually complete that learning activity this week. All right, your fellow classmates will really benefit from your feedback as far as your perceptions of the project actually goes. And often some of the best ways to improve our own work is to actually dissect and analyze the work of others around us. So that's one of the focuses this week. The other one is explore the additional resources provided to you this week and beyond to further develop your understanding of optimizing the retail experience for your consumers. So there is only one reading this week. I've gone easy on the readings for you this week. So there's your lecture, obviously, which you are watching now, your collaborative session this week, and then your 3 learning activities. So the first one I've already discussed. The second one asks you to take a look at how you can extend your consumer experience using additional resources. And there's a reading here, Connected Interactions, the Need for Personalization, so be sure to check that out. Your third learning activity pertains to that reading in particular. So this week, I really want you to spend some time exploring this project in further detail. I've provided you with some resources about the project, but there is a plethora more of them out there. So make sure that you do spend some time really understanding the project, the motivations behind it, and what is actually happening in the environment. And then I'd like you to really consider how you can extend your consumer experience and connectivity to the brand beyond just selling space. So you will have completed your event mapping by now. Loads of you have actually uploaded your plan onto the forums, which is great. I would like you to take a look at one of your major milestones this week and think about how you can remove selling space from that particular event and change it for something that is more interactive and more engaging in terms of the consumer experience and emotion. So there's a little activity for you there this week to actually write a convincing argument for your client, telling them why it's important that they give up some of their product selling space to enable you to create a more interactive consumer experience. So not too intense this week because you should be progressing fairly focused and intentionally on your project, which is due in week 12. Next week is week 10, and we're going to be looking at interaction design next week and the parallels between interaction design and architecture or spatial design. We're going to look at interaction design theory and how we can use the principles of creating digital worlds or digital environments to help us augment physical environments as our role of designers continues to shift and change in this post-modern world. So that's pretty much it for this week, guys. Just a very simple lecture this week about the case study. So I want you to focus on working through that and really exploring the project in further detail. And I look forward to seeing your takeaways and discussions from the case study and also hearing all about how you think you might be able to use what you've learned from this case study in your own project. I hope your own assignments are going well, and I hope to see you in the Collaborate session this week to discuss those assessment submissions in further detail, just to make sure you guys are all on the right track. As always, if there are any questions, issues, or concerns, please post them on the forums or reach out to me on my class messages. Otherwise, I will see you in your Collaborate session later this week.